Welcome on into Sports Memo Today, a Thursday edition, and we're happy to be here with you. I'm your host, Dan Alexander, here to bring you some actionable information in 30 minutes or less. And when March Madness is in full swing, that's exactly what you need. You just need actionable info right away. We got 4 great plays for you. Hopefully, we sweep the board and get a 4-way cash. We got Nikki B and Ronnie C on the show here today. Nick Borrman going to be talking a little MLS action, and Ronald Cabang going to be talking a little NBA action to end the show. It's an all totals edition as well. So if you like betting totals, this is the show for you. And that's why we did MLS and NBA on the show today, because we know anyone who likes college basketball is not watching us right now. So we're going to have you ready to go this weekend and tonight in some action. So let's get right into it. Welcome in my man, Nick Borrman. And if you want to get his thoughts on the PGA event that's going right now, you might not be able to get down on some of the futures, but maybe you can get some buy low, some sell high spots using the info that my man Nick drops. You can find that on Wager Talk Extra, another show I do here with Wager Talk and Sports Memo. But Nick, let's get right into it, brother. Let's talk a little MLS, and I'm glad to see we're not going to be talking any union, because anytime I was talking, who was it? The other week I had on, I think it was Jesse Shule, who was talking some MLS action, and he was just making a case for why we have to fade the union. So I said, he's not allowed on anymore. We're only talking MLS with Nick Borrman. So let's talk a little Seattle LAFC. We're looking at a total in this one. What do you got for him, Nick?
Yeah, Dan, you're right. It's March Madness, so maybe we'll catch the odds makers with their pants down here, not paying attention to this. So let's see what we can find. I'm looking at Seattle LAFC, easily the biggest matchup of the weekend, and 2 of the most successful teams in the league at this current state and time. Seattle, they jumped out to a 2-0 start with clean sheet wins over Colorado and Salt Lake. They scored 6 goals, didn't give up a single goal before they lost 1-0 at Cincinnati this past weekend, which is not a bad loss at all, because Cincy is going to be a very good team this year. Seattle was a team I had penciled in for a big jump this year, Dan. If you look at the results last year, it was their worst year. Their first year, actually, to ever miss the playoffs in their franchise history. And it had a lot to do with a terrible start to the year. They actually were in the Champions League along with the MLS. And unlike Europe, where you see teams juggling both competitions, the MLS just doesn't have the depth to be able to juggle both very successfully. So they put all their eggs in the Champions League basket, and they were the first MLS team to ever win the Champions League in its current format. So success came there, but at the expense of the MLS. They started off slow. They could not make it back. They didn't make the playoffs. But this year, no Champions League, and they're off to a hot start. They're averaging the second most expected goals per 90 minutes, behind only, guess who, Dan? This LAFC team. So this is 2 of the high-powered offenses in the leagues. The defending champs, LAFC, also gotten off to a fast start this season, 2-0. They've scored 7 goals already. They also put up another 3 in their Champions League games that they are in this year. Their offense is clearly firing on all cylinders. They are averaging 2.35 expected goals per 90 minutes, and they rank second in total shot volume per game, 16.5 shots with 8.5 on target. So they are definitely putting up the offense. And this is a heated rivalry, Dan, and it's been very high scoring in the past. 8 of the last 11 have seen at least 3 goals scored. All signs point to another shootout here this weekend. This is an early kick on Saturday, going 4 o'clock Eastern or 1 o'clock in Seattle local time. So something to look forward to on Saturday afternoon.
Looking towards the over in Seattle and LAFC. All right, let's swing it on over to New England and Nashville. We got an overplay for the folks. And I think, Nick, you have a case to be made for the under in this one, correct?
That is correct. We're going opposite here, Dan, and we're going under. I think this is going to be a tight, low-scoring game. Nashville, strong start this year, 7 points through 3 matches, and it's really all thanks to their defense. They are the only team in the MLS not to yet allow a goal. They've allowed just 0.43 expected goals per 90 minutes, which ranks number 1 in the league. They're allowing only 8.3 shots and 1.7 on target, which are both in the top 5 defensively. And it's also worth mentioning that they're doing this with a pretty tough schedule. They played both New York teams already and the number 2 seed in the East from last year, Montreal. So it's not like they're playing the cake teams here. Nashville so far has not generated much on the offensive side of the ball, but mostly because they haven't needed to. Through 3 games, they are averaging just 1.03 expected goals per match. and they rank in the bottom 5 in actual shot volume per game as well. But this is a team last year that averaged 1.6 expected goals per game, which ranked 8th in the league. So at some point, they'll probably get their offense going a little bit. But right now, they're relying on their defense. New England, they won their first 2 matches of the season, albeit against 2 sides that failed to make the playoffs last year, Charlotte and Houston. And then reality set in this past weekend where they were walloped 4-0 by LAFC. They generated just 0.3 expected goals on only 4 total shots in the game. So even with those 2 layup games they had to start the year, they're averaging just 1.03 expected goals per match, which is very worrisome against a defense as strong as Nashville. However, dating back to last season, it's really been the defensive end that's been the problem for the Revs. They've allowed 1.6 expected goals per 90 minutes, ranked 5th worst last year. So I think this is going to be a Nashville controlled game, and it'll be low scoring because of that. They may look to get that lead 1 or 2-0 and then let their defense follow this thing out. So I'm going under the total here. And if you like a side in this one, I also like Nashville getting the head start plus a quarter of a goal as well, Dave.
So even a little bit of a 2-pack there, looking at the under and correlating it with Nashville, my man Nick Borrman. And Nick, great promo that we have, and it's ending this weekend, and they can grab the rest of your MLS for just $249. And correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to MLS, it's just wash, rinse, repeat when you're talking about profitable seasons. It's what, going on 5 straight, or we're looking for 6 straight here, Nick?
MLS has definitely been my bread and butter. This will be going for my 5th straight winning season, and we're off to an 8-3 start already, banking 17 units. So hopefully we continue that rolling. Won each of the first 3 weekends of the season, and let's make it 4 in a row here to start this year. And yeah, 249. The rest of the season expires after this weekend.
Yeah, and you don't want to miss out on that, as we said. I mean, 5 straight potential winning seasons, knocking on wood for him, but with the 8-3 start, picking up just shy of 17 units to start the season, you're already starting to miss that cash cow that is Nick Borman's MLS package. Check it out, sm.buzz/NB. And speaking of money-making propositions, my man Ronald Cabang, UCapper, joining us here, man. One of my favorites to talk NBA action with. Ronald, it's great to have you back here on the show. And just like we did with Nick, let's get right into it and get the folks some actionable info here tonight. If you had maybe 2 screens, maybe even 3 screens, throw on NBA on the side and ride some totals with my man Ronald Cabang. Nuggets, Pistons. I think we're sitting at around 228.5. There's been a little bit of movement here, a little bit of movement there, but how are you going to be betting this one?
Yeah, I'm looking at the over in this one. One of the big things for the Nuggets here, they're on a 4-game losing streak. They've actually failed to cover in 5 straight, and also giving up points to their opponents. Their opponents are 5-0 to the over in those last 5 games as well, to their team total. One thing that I noticed is that their defense tends to struggle on the road specifically. And when I looked at them as a double-digit road favorites here, it's only small sample size, but they're 2-0 to the over as double-digit road favorites. In those 2 games, they averaged actually it was 245 in one game and 248 in the other. Both games were in regulation, not even OT scores there. So to me, I'm expecting the Nuggets to bounce back offensively, especially on a 4-game losing streak here against a poor Detroit team. And I think they're gonna really not focus on the defensive side of the ball here. I think they want to stay healthy. They're not gonna put a lot of emphasis on defense against a lowly team like the Pistons here. So that's one way that I was looking at it, was really how do they do in that double-digit favorite. On the opposite side, the Pistons as double-digit dogs, when we look at to them towards double-digit dog situations with a total greater than 225, they're 7-4 to the over, averaging 237.8 points per game combined, and that's about to say maybe like 7 or 8 points above what the current total is, maybe 9 points. So there's a big gap there. I like the over in this one. A few more things to mention as well. Pistons, following a 20-point loss, they tend to try and overcompensate with offense and a faster pace. They're 10-3 to the over in situations where they're following a 20-point loss game, and they did that in the most recent game versus I believe it was the Wizards here. They're coming off a 20-point loss against the Wizards there. So this is a situation they're in today, 10-3 to the over there, averaging 240 per game combined in that spot. So a lot of things to me pointing towards the over here, a bounce back spot offensively. I'm definitely not going to take the spread there on a huge number. So that's going to push me just taking to the over here.
Yeah, and we're already starting to see some movement towards that over. We're seeing some 229s out there at shops like Circa as well. So if you want to grab that 228.5 probably do it sooner rather than later. In this Nets Kings matchup, second game that you wanted to take a look at, we've also seen some movement in that, and this is just all kinds of money continuing to come in on the over. This thing opened at 237.5. It's now sitting at 238. There are some 238.5s out there as well, but Ronald, I think you might be saying, hey, let that over money keep on coming, because that's just giving me more value and a better number on sweeping in on the under. How are you betting this one?
Yeah, one thing about CLV this season, it's really been off and on. I think one thing to know is these huge numbers lately, especially when you hit the 240 mark, has been going under. I know this one isn't that 240 mark here as far as the total goes, but it's really close to there. I think Kings games, you typically look directly to the over, and probably a lot of the tickets and the money is going towards the over in this one. That's what's pushing it up there. But for the most part, a lot of things are pointing towards the under for me in this game here. Kings on the second leg of back-to-back games, one of the big drivers for them really being a efficient offense is Sabonis, and he played 40 minutes last night. So I can see them limiting his minutes here. They're in good position to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to start to look at possibly doing some load management or anything like that with their roster. I haven't seen if he's going to be playing or not, but 40 minutes on the second leg of back-to-back games, you're, like I said, they're in good position for the playoffs. Not a bad spot to do that load management strategy here for Sabonis. He is that key guy there. As much as everyone talks about Fox, Sabonis is the guy putting up, near triple-double almost every game. So I would say that they take care of him, make sure he's healthy for the playoffs here. Nets on the other side, they're coming off a 14-point loss here to the Thunder on Tuesday. This is the first of a 4-game homestand following 5 straight road games. Typically, that's a spot that I feel like is sort of a bad schedule spot for the team going home after a long road trip. They tend to struggle offensively in that first game, and I don't see anything different here. I think we're going to see two teams kind of in a bad position here as far as offensive output. The first matchup this season, they combined for 275, 274 in regulation. The Sacramento Kings just really dominated that matchup. I don't expect that type of score in this game here. I really do like the under in this one. I took the Kings and the Bulls under yesterday for a specific reason. The Kings are 10-3 to the under in non-conference road games this season, and that includes the game yesterday. So another thing to mention as well, when they're on the second game of a road trip, the Kings are 7-0 to the under. One thing that I've noticed so far this season, I listen to, or I typically listen to some of these post-game interviews with coaches and things like that. One thing that kind of stuck with me this season was, it might have been Darvin Ham. He went from an East Coast game, East Coast game to Portland for the Lakers there, and he talked about how typically they get the jet lag on that second game, going from east to west or west to east, and this is that second game here going from west to east. So I'm expecting them to struggle even more so on the offensive side of the ball, like they did yesterday. There's only 2 games so far this season at home for the Nets after the All-Star break, and both games went under by margin. One of them actually went under by 42 points. And for the most part, it's because of their offense. They're 28th in the league in offensive rating post All-Star break. And in this game here, they still have a lot of playoff hopes in this one, right, for the Nets here. So I think what they're going to do is they know that they can't outscore this Kings team. They're really going to focus on the defensive side of the ball, and that's the only way that they're going to get a chance to get this win. So I'm going to look towards the Kings and the Nets under in this high total of 238 here.
Looking towards the under. So we got an over in the Nuggets Pistons. We got the under in the Nets Kings. And Ronald, I'll say when March Madness is in full swing, I think sometimes people don't realize the advantageous positions that you can have betting sports like NBA, like NHL, some of these, major sports that kind of take a back seat because everybody's thinking tourney, everybody's looking that way, and the odds makers are doing the exact same. I'm not saying their whole risk room falls apart and they don't have, they're not paying attention to big bets coming on here, but lines do move a little bit slower. So I'm sure that you would suggest, well, you're going to continue to cap the NBA throughout the entirety of the tournament. This is a great time to check you out over at sportsmemo.com, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's already started. I mean, the last, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was on a pretty bad run there, but the last week and a half, everything's been going really well. I mean, I'm not changing up the strategy. I think the books are, like you said, are focusing in on the larger market here, which is the NCAA tournament. So yeah, if you can take advantage of a slow time here in the NBA where the lines are moving a little bit slower, or maybe the books aren't really taking, I guess, into consideration certain issues in the NBA,
Mhm.
certain trends and things like that. You can take advantage of that, and that's what it seems like is happening right now. Been a good week so far. I think yesterday was 2-1. I think the day before was 3-1. So going really well in the NBA. Hopefully, we just continue to close out the season on a strong note here.
sm.buzz/RC. That's where you can get all the best bets locked and loaded right now over at Ronald Cabang's page. Big thanks to Ronald and big thanks to Nick Borrman. As I promised you, got you that info in 30 minutes or less. How about nearly 15 minutes? We were able to get you in and out of here, which means you can go back to your March Madness. Hopefully that, you're cashing your tickets with regularity there. And that does it for another week of shows for us. Big thanks to Eric, my producer, doing a terrific job behind the scenes. I'm your host, Dan Alexander, and we'll see you Tuesday right back here on Sports Memo Today.